Chapter 759. Gu Mengmeng patted his shoulder. If you want to save your sister, you have to tell me everything. If you hide anything, I may not be able to help you. Fei Rui sighed. His eyes that were as bright as the stars seemed to be covered by dark clouds, losing their luster. His brows furrowed as he said with guilt and heartache, "The leader of the giant fish tribe, Carter, led a group of tribesmen and charged into our tribe. They captured my sister and said that Dora had personally admitted that their tribe's treasure was in my sister's hands. No matter how we tried to explain, we couldn't beat them. We could only watch helplessly as they snatched my sister away." Gu Mengmeng's smile widened. She poked Fei Rui's head and asked, "Then what about the territory being snatched away?" Fei Rui's lips curled downwards, looking like he was trying hard to hold it in. With a hint of youthful stubbornness, he said, "Because I kept asking Carter to return my sister. He found me annoying and challenged me. He said that if I won, he would return my sister to me. But if I lost, I would have to give him the territory of the mermaid tribe. I clearly knew that I was no match for him, but I still agreed. Because of my stupidity and recklessness, I implicated my tribesmen and my sister." Gu Mengmeng patted Fei Rui's shoulder and comforted him. "Oh, you can do that. All right, let's not wait for that Dora anymore. Let's go find Carter." Fei Rui looked up at Gu Mengmeng in confusion. Gu Mengmeng smiled. "Can't we challenge him? I will help you beat him up and win back my sister and the territory." Fei Rui stared at Gu Mengmeng in a daze. Can I?" Gu Mengmeng smiled. "Why not?" Fei Rui hesitated. He knew that the consequences would be the same as the mermaid beast's worries. Once Gu Mengmeng left, the giant fish beasts would still attack them in revenge, and they would not be able to withstand it. But even so, he was desperate to save his sister. Just this once. Just one last time of recklessness. He felt that if it was Gu Mengmeng, she might be trustworthy. Nodding, Fei Rui ignored his tribesman's objections. He grabbed Gu Mengmeng's hand and flew off like an arrow. Wabi clicked his tongue impatiently behind her, but still followed after her. The people of the mermaid tribe seemed to be afraid of Carter. None of them dared to follow him. They just quietly returned to the depths of the ocean. Other than a string of sighing bubbles, it was as if nothing had happened. The original territory of the mermaids was a large coral sea. The living corals were soft and tender, moving with the flow of the water. They were full of vitality and had an indescribable sense of tranquil beauty. Many nameless aquatic plants were evenly distributed and intertwined with the corals, forming a mirage in the sea. It looked a bit like the East Ocean Dragon Palace. A few giant fish beasts were wandering around the edge of the territory. They seemed to be guarding the gate. The moment he saw Fei Rui, he turned into his half-beast form and mocked him with disdain. "Weakling, are you looking for trouble again? You've already lost your territory. What other chips do you have to challenge our patriarch?" Fei Rui clenched his fists tightly and bit his lower lip, unable to speak. Gu Mengmeng took 2 steps forward and said with a smile, "Go, call Carter out for me." The giant fish beast sized Gu Mengmeng up with a dazed expression. Chapter 760. Wabi took 2 steps forward and narrowed his eyes. "I asked you to call for help. Are you deaf? If you look again, I will gouge your eyes out." Snake beast?" The guard from the giant fish tribe was clearly shocked. He instantly jumped back a few meters and looked at Wabi warily. He seemed to be quite frightened. Gu Mengmeng tilted her head and asked Wabi, "Why are they so afraid of you? Have you done any harm here before?" Wabi snorted coldly. "Not me, it's him." With that, he tapped the back of Gu Mengmeng's neck. Gu Mengmeng thought hard. Snake had indeed been to the bottom of the sea before. But it seemed like he had only come to find some seafood to improve his diet when he was bored. It seemed like he had not harmed anyone, right? Wait a minute. What did he eat back then? Gu Mengmeng suddenly felt a chill down her spine. She shook her head and finally understood why the ocean tribe was so afraid of snakes. Sighing in exasperation, she grinned at the giant fish tribe who had fled in fear. Clearly, this fellow had obediently gone to report. Chuckling, she said in exasperation, "See, shouldn't you have been so obedient earlier? Why must you let our little shit throw a tantrum? TSK, cheap bastard. Gu Meng Meng." Wabi-Ai gritted his teeth and roared her name word by word. Gu Meng Meng smiled nonchalantly. "Why are you glaring at me? I am not afraid of you." Wabi-Ai was infuriated. He grabbed Gu Meng Meng's shoulders and turned her around. Then, he said to the mark on the back of her neck, "Snake, hurry and take her away." Then, Wabi-Ai was stunned. There was actually poison on his hands. He had long developed immunity to this poison. After all, he had been poisoned for over 800 years. Although the poison was quickly diluted by the seawater, he could still recognize it. It was snake's poison. Staring at the mark on the back of Gu Meng Meng's neck, he was more and more convinced of what Gu Meng Meng had said previously. Snake was in her body. She was the one who lied to him. Snake was here, he must be here. This realization made Wabi-Ai a little crazy. He grabbed Gu Meng Meng's shoulders and shook her violently. "Snake, you are here, aren't you? Come out, let's fight." Gu Meng Meng was about to vomit from Wabi-Ai's shaking. Actually, it was just because Wabi-Ai was too fierce to her just now that triggered Snake's protection mark. It was not Snake's soul that was angry, but it was useless for her to say anything now. Shaking her shoulders, Gu Meng Meng turned to look at Wabi-Ai. "TSK, don't get touchy." Wabi-Ai was taken aback for 2 seconds before he continued shaking Gu Meng Meng. Gu Meng Meng was really on the verge of vomiting from his shaking. Unable to tolerate it any longer, she slapped Wabi-Ai far away. This scene happened to be seen clearly by Carter, who had just been called out from the tribe. There was no other male snake beast at the peak of level 5 in this world. How strong was it? Perhaps, even if they had never met, a single glare from him would be enough to make her heart tremble. A man like this was sent flying by a smaller female? Chapter 761. Carter's shock at Gu Meng Meng's slap was shattered by Fei Rui's appearance. The moment he saw Fei Rui, Carter's gaze was filled with disdain and arrogance. He smirked and said in an arrogant tone, "If you are so capable, snatch it back." Gu Meng Meng patted Fei Rui, who was clearly afraid but still wanted to charge forward. She comforted him with a smile. Fei Rui was a good child. Even though his thoughts were not mature enough and he was not powerful enough, just the fact that he stood in front of Gu Meng Meng to protect her even though he was clearly afraid was enough to make Gu Meng Meng willingly help him. Not because of the kiss of the ocean or any other reason, but because Gu Meng Meng felt that Fei Rui was a good person. Fei Rui pursed his lips into a straight line. He was hesitant but eventually calmed down. On one hand, he believed in Gu Meng Meng's abilities, but on the other hand, he was worried that Gu Meng Meng would be at a disadvantage. After all, she was a female. With that thought in mind, he stared unblinkingly at Gu Meng Meng. Every cell in his body was on guard against Carter, ready to use himself as a meat shield to protect Gu Meng Meng. Gu Meng Meng chuckled at how nervous he was and didn't say anything. She took 2 steps forward and looked at Carter. He had a strong physique and a resolute face. If he held a fork in his hand, he would be the most handsome version of the sea god Poseidon. His temperament was similar to Elvis from a certain point of view. His entire body was filled with signs that said, "Strangers do not come near," and the way he looked at her was very familiar to Gu Meng Meng, because Elvis and Leah always had this cold and guarded look when they looked at someone other than Gu Meng Meng. Gu Meng Meng placed her hands behind her back and looked up at Carter. Her small body contained a lot of energy. The nobility that Snake had accumulated over thousands of years was naturally not something someone like Carter could compare to. Let's put it this way, if Gu Meng Meng really wanted to act cool, no one in the entire beast world could do it better than her unless Snake himself came back to life. She chuckled with a king's disdain. She opened her mouth and said slowly and evenly, "Now, the ocean tribes are no longer under the beast deity's control?" Carter was taken aback and frowned. as if he didn't understand what she meant. Wabi-Ai, who had been sent flying by Gu Mengmeng, had already stood back up. He had to play his role well in front of outsiders and not embarrass that person. Hence, Wabi-Ai stared coldly at Carter, not saying a single word. Meanwhile, Fei Rui was standing on the other side of Gu Mengmeng. Although he was a little timid, he still said, "This is the messenger of the beast deity, Carter. No matter how arrogant you are, there should be a limit." Messenger of the beast deity. Carter's eyes darkened and his jaw muscles bulged, as if he was gritting his teeth and weighing something. Clenching his fists tightly by his sides, he remained silent for a moment before lowering his head and bowing respectfully. "Greetings, messenger of the beast deity." Gu Mengmeng chuckled. She rested one hand on Fei Rui's arm and leaned against Wabi-Ai's shoulder, looking like an indecent empress dowager. She chuckled and said, "Let's skip the formalities. I am here to see, what is your sister's name again?" Fei Rui whispered into Gu Mengmeng's ear, "Melinda." Gu Mengmeng said, "Yeah, right. I'm here to see Melinda. Leader Carter, please make things convenient for me." Chapter 762. As they brushed shoulders, Wabi-Ai bumped into him. Carter stumbled awkwardly but could not do anything to Wabi-Ai. He could only clench his fists and follow behind Gu Mengmeng silently. This was originally the territory of the mermaid tribe, so Fei Rui was very familiar with the place and easily found his younger sister's original residence. Pink corals formed a circle around a huge open shell. The shell was filled with fresh seaweed, stacked neatly on top of one another. A pillow made from giant clams was placed at one end of the large shell. Beside it was some kind of shellfish containing food. Gu Mengmeng had never seen it before, so it must be some kind of fruit from the bottom of the sea. A young girl was sitting on the ground, her upper body sprawled on the seaweed on the shell bed. She buried her face in her arms and refused to look up. Her blonde hair was slightly curled. It was not exaggerated, but it was very classy. Gu Mengmeng would not normally say that blonde girls were classy. Even if it was a high-end blonde goddess from European and American movies, she would at most say that they had an aura. Gu Mengmeng felt that only black-haired Chinese girls were worthy of the term classy. But for some reason, just by looking at her back, Gu Mengmeng felt that a blonde girl was classy for the first time. She lay there motionlessly, looking like an injured swan in a ballet. There was a faint sense of sadness and helplessness, but also stubbornness and unwillingness to give in. Gu Mengmeng had not even seen her face, but her heart ached for this girl. "Melinda." Fei Rui called out agitatedly. The girl's back froze for a moment before she suddenly turned around. Her eyes, which were almost identical to Fei Rui's, were misty, but her lips were curved into a joyful smile. "Brother." The girl stood up abruptly. Ignoring the numbness in her legs, she ran towards Fei Rui in a sorry state. Fei Rui naturally did the same. He rushed forward and hugged his sister tightly in his arms, comforting her gently and patiently. Gu Mengmeng glanced at Carter. Her eyes were filled with complicated emotions. Enduring? Sadness? Helplessness? Perhaps it was pain, but there was no anger. This was not the look one should have when looking at a criminal. Gu Mengmeng was no stranger to this look. Elvis and Leah had the same look when looking at her. "You're not satisfied?" Gu Mengmeng stood beside Carter and asked. Carter gritted his teeth and said, "Unless the great emissary stays at the bottom of the sea to protect the mermaid clan, otherwise." "You're still going to use the excuse of the clan treasure being stolen to continue imprisoning the girl?" Glancing sideways, Gu Mengmeng accepted the shock in Carter's eyes calmly. This fellow must have thought that he had acted very well and no one would know the truth. Gu Mengmeng smiled like an expert, then said lightly, "What you did would only push her to the opposite side of you. If in her eyes, you will always be the enemy." Carter's eyes widened at Gu Mengmeng's words. He didn't even have such a reaction when he saw Wabi-Ai. Chapter 763. Fei Rui finally managed to coax the crying Melinda. Then, he held her little hand and slowly walked over to Gu Mengmeng. He looked at Gu Mengmeng anxiously. "Great messenger, can we bring my sister away? Gu Mengmeng tilted her head. I just came in to take a look. I will leave after making sure your sister is fine. You have to ask Carter whether you can bring her away. Gu Mengmeng's words stunned not only Fei Roy and Melinda, but even Carter. 3 pairs of eyes widened in shock. They stared at Gu Mengmeng in confusion. Gu Mengmeng shrugged. Of course, no one can stop me even if I were to openly rob her today. But, do you want Melinda to be labeled as a thief forever? Think carefully. If she leaves with me today, it would be equivalent to confirming her crime of stealing someone else's things. She would not be able to clear her name again in the future. Gu Mengmeng shrugged nonchalantly and said, well, it's easier for me to just bring her away directly. After all, our deal is just to help you save your sister. It doesn't include clearing her name, and it also doesn't include whether she will be captured again after I leave. This. Fei Roy was in a dilemma again. He bit his lower lip. It's all right. I can bring my sister to another part of the ocean and start afresh. Far away from here, no one will recognize us and no one will be able to find us. When he mentioned leaving, Carter's pupils shrank. The veins on his fists were popping. He was clearly furious. Gu Mengmeng tugged at him and shook her head gently. Then, her gaze landed on Melinda's face. She smiled gently. Melinda fulfilled all of Gu Mengmeng's fantasies of being a mermaid. She was not just a back-view killer. Even Gu Mengmeng, who had been brainwashed by Elvis and Leah to think that she was the most beautiful woman in the world, felt a sense of inferiority in front of Melinda. Long years at the bottom of the sea had caused her skin to be smooth and fair. Her body, which had been honed by swimming, flowed smoothly like water. There was not a single bit of excess fat on her body. She was simply the embodiment of perfection. Her face was so pure that people couldn't bear to say a harsh word in front of her. She was supposed to be a princess that was held in the palm of the hand. Melinda had definitely refreshed Gu Mengmeng's understanding of females in the beast world. She was the most beautiful female Gu Mengmeng had ever seen in the beast world. At this moment, Marlene bit her lower lip and hesitated for a long time. But she still raised her head with determination and looked at Gu Mengmeng. No, I'm not leaving. I didn't steal anything, so why should I run away? Gu Mengmeng smiled softly. From the corner of her eye, she saw that Carter had also finally heaved a sigh of relief, no longer suffocating as if someone was strangling him. Gu Mengmeng walked in front of Fei Roy and patted his shoulder. Looking into his sparkling eyes, she comforted him. I will stay by the seaside for a while and help Melinda settle the matter of the theft. I will let her live openly at the place she likes. Do you want to believe me for once? But. Fei Roy's gaze turned towards Carter. It was filled with wariness and hostility. Gu Mengmeng reached out without hesitation and sent Carter flying with a slap. Then, she dusted her hands. With me around, I'll see who dares to bully my little mermaid. Chapter 764. By the time they returned to the shore, the moon was already shining brightly. Leah sat by the fire and stirred the food in the pot, his eyes constantly drifting to the surface of the sea. It wasn't until he saw that familiar figure running in front of him that his heart finally calmed down. Elvis removed the beast skin that had been roasting by the fire and wrapped it around Gu Mengmeng. He then glared coldly at Fei Roy back into the sea. He watched as Wabi knowingly swam into the forest in search of food. There was no one else by the shore, so he quickly helped Gu Mengmeng change into a clean set of clothes to prevent her from catching a cold. As Gu Mengmeng changed, she reached out her hand for food. She was really hungry. Although it was either Fei Roy or Wabi who pulled her along the entire journey, the distance she had swum today was definitely enough for her to complete a triathlon. She had used up a lot of her energy. Elvis was always in a good mood when he saw her eat more. So he asked as he fed her, how did the matter go? Did the leader of the giant fish tribe make things difficult for you? Gu Mengmeng chuckled and said, the plot is rather melodramatic. It's just like the deep-sea version of, the president is above, I'm below, adhering to the light-hearted plot of torturing you because I love you. I really wonder if the brains of you males are filled with laundry detergent? Leah and Elvis were at a loss. They had no idea what laundry detergent was, but from her tone, it was probably not a compliment. But they caught on to something. Torturing you because I love you? So, not only did Gu Mengmeng attract a love rival for them in the sea today, she had also been wronged and tormented. Gu Mengmeng could tell from their expressions that they had misunderstood again. Raising her hand, Gu Mengmeng stopped herself in time. Stop, don't let your thoughts run wild. He doesn't like me. I am at most a matchmaker in this matter. Elvis's face darkened as he asked in a monosyllabic voice. Gu Mengmeng took another bite of meat. Before she swallowed, she smiled and tilted her head to point at the surface of the sea with her chin. There, the main character is here. If you are curious, just ask him directly. Carter had originally come to ask Gu Mengmeng why she was helping him, and also what to do next. But seeing that there were others around, he could not bring himself to do it. She wanted to go back the way she came, but when she saw how Gu Mengmeng, Elvis and Leah were interacting, she felt very envious. Momentarily at a loss, she walked closer. Now that he had been singled out by Gu Mengmeng, it was too late for him to retreat. He might as well transform into his human form and walk over. Elvis handed Gu Mengmeng over to Leah before standing up and walking towards Carter. With a cold expression, he asked, "What did you do to Xiao Meng?" Carter had long seen Elvis's mark on Gu Mengmeng's collarbone, so he naturally knew about their relationship. He pursed his lips and said, "I was slapped by the great messenger, does that count?" Without saying a word, Elvis threw a punch at Carter's face. Carter fell to the ground, seeing stars. He was considered a tyrant in the sea, but his abilities were limited on land. Moreover, he was only a third-level beast, so a punch from the fifth-level Elvis was enough to make him suffer. Elvis's voice was cold and filled with anger. Xiao Meng never hits people for no reason. If she hits you, it must be because you did something that deserves to be hit. Carter looked at Elvis and did not open his mouth. On one hand, he had a deep-rooted fear towards the strong, and on the other hand, he had a favor to ask of Gu Mengmeng. He was willing to pay such a price. Digression, author Xiao Meng, son, why did you hit people for no reason without asking clearly? Elvis, Xiao Meng thinks that he deserves to be hit. That is the most sufficient reason for me to hit him. I don't need anything else. Author Xiao Meng, both of you have violent tendencies. Carter is innocent. Elvis, innocent? Do you know how many joints in Xiao Meng's body needed to move to complete that slap? My Xiao Meng had to go through so much trouble, yet he is innocent. Chapter 765. Gu Mengmeng didn't stop Elvis from beating Carter up. She just ate with gusto. When she was almost done, she called out, "Hubby, wash the pot." Elvis left Carter behind and returned to Gu Mengmeng's side. He kissed her oily lips, then carried the new stone pot Leah had made to the beach to wash it. Carter then climbed up from the ground pathetically and walked to Gu Mengmeng's side. He bowed and greeted, "Great messenger." Gu Mengmeng acted as if she couldn't see the wounds all over his body. "Sit down. Tell me your story." Carter was taken aback. He had thought that since Gu Mengmeng had been sent by Fei Rui, she would definitely detest him as much as Fei Rui did. Although she had not displayed any hostility at the bottom of the sea and had even secretly helped him keep Melinda behind, he still could not figure out what this great messenger was thinking. Moreover, he thought that Gu Mengmeng would at least ask him why he was looking for her. But she asked him to tell her his story? He came here with a stomach full of questions, not to tell a story. Gu Mengmeng smacked her lips, as if she was still savoring the taste of that last mouthful of meat. After swallowing her saliva in satisfaction, Gu Mengmeng spoke first. "I will stay here for 10 days. If you can't settle Melinda in 10 days, I will leave with the siblings." "Great messenger." Carter growled. Leah laughed coldly as he protected Gu Mengmeng in his arms. His slanted eyes were filled with disdain and provocation as he stared at Carter. His tone was calm but colder than the seawater under the moonlight. "Killing you here might be a simpler and more violent method. How long has it been since I last ate fish?" Thinking about it. I'm really hungry. They were both third-level beasts, but they were on land. Carter couldn't possibly defeat Leah. If he wanted to return to the sea, Elvis was guarding the beach and wouldn't give him a chance to enter the sea. Moreover, he was here to ask questions and not to cause trouble. Carter bent his knees and knelt in front of Gu Mengmeng. He lowered his head. Great messenger, please help me. Tell me how to make Melinda accept me. Gu Mengmeng chuckled and leaned into Li's arms. I want you to sit down, not kneel. If I don't want to help you, it's useless for you to kneel or kowtow. If I want to help you, I won't trample on your dignity, understand? Carter nodded, not fully understanding. Then, he sat up according to Gu Mengmeng's instructions. He stared at Gu Mengmeng with sparkling eyes, as if he was hoping to see a flower blossoming on her face and pluck it for Melinda to win her heart. Gu Mengmeng sighed and said, even if I want to give you ideas, I have to first know what is going on. Tell me your story with Melinda, and I'll help you think of a way. Carter nodded. He was obviously a hardliner, but at this moment, when he thought of his sweetheart, a trace of gentleness and shyness appeared on his face. There was a territorial dispute between clans, and I was heavily injured. I almost lost my life. I was saved by Melinda, who was out playing. With just one look, I fell in love with her. After I recovered, I returned to the giant fish tribe. The battle was still going on, and I couldn't leave my people behind. But when the battle ended and I went to find her, she didn't recognize me. She rejected me, resisted me, avoided me. She was afraid of me. Out of topic. Chapter 766. She is the most beautiful female in the world. I swear I will cherish her, protect her and give her the best. But, she was so nice to me when I was injured. Why did she abandon me after I recovered? I did not do anything to hurt her, why is she afraid of me? Even you, the great messenger, can see through my feelings for her. Why does she not know? I will never hurt her. Carter felt helpless and helpless. He lowered his head and sighed, unable to say anything else. Gu Mengmeng chuckled. You snatched the mermaid tribe's territory and forced her tribesmen to have nowhere to go. You humiliated her brother time and time again, forcing him to come all the way to Saint Nazaire to ask for my help to save him. Do you think all these are not hurt? Carter looked up in confusion. I snatched the mermaid tribe's territory because she did not like where the giant fish tribe lived. She said she wanted to go home, so I snatched her home back for her. Gu Mengmeng could not control herself and laughed. Her face was filled with the word convinced. His way of thinking was really strange. How did he come up with such a solution? Gu Mengmeng really felt that gender theory and horoscopes were all a fantasy. How did the way of thinking between the sexes become so different? And Fei Rui, he is always the one challenging me. I have never taken the initiative to find trouble with him, it is not my fault that he could not beat me, Gu Mengmeng face-bombed. Young man, your way of thinking is called, destined to be alone. Do you understand? Carter shook his head honestly. Gu Mengmeng explained kindly. It means destined to be alone for life. Carter panicked. Why? What did I do wrong? Gu Mengmeng suddenly wanted to laugh. It was like a child who handed in a blank paper and asked his teacher, Teacher, what do you think I did wrong? What can I improve on? The teacher's reply was, you did wrong because you did not even write your name. Gu Mengmeng patted Li's chest. Tell him where he did wrong. I am afraid I will drown him with my spit. Leah suddenly felt that Carter was not so annoying. After all, he was blind. A handicapped fish was quite pitiful. Why did he say that he was blind? Of course, it was because he said that Melinda was the most beautiful female in the world. What a joke, the most beautiful female in the world was Gu Mengmeng in his arms, alright? If he couldn't even tell, what else could he be other than blind? Leah still had some compassion for the handicapped. After all, a witch doctor was also a kind of angel in white. It was his duty to care for the wounded. Of course, The prerequisite was that this patient did not covet his Meng Meng. Clearing his throat, Leah placed his large tail into Gu Mengmeng's arms, allowing her to play with it. Squinting his eyes, Leah said, "With your intellect, you can't have thought of framing her for stealing, right? Tell me, who is the mastermind behind this?" Chapter 767. Gu Mengmeng and Leah looked at each other and smiled, understanding each other. Leah continued, "The female said she wanted to go home and you snatched her territory, this idea." Carter replied with a blank expression, "Oh, this was my own idea." Leah chuckled, "No one reminded you?" Carter thought for a moment, then replied, "Dora gave me a suggestion." Leah chuckled, then shook his head and sighed, ignoring Carter. He hooked Gu Mengmeng's chin and said affectionately, "Meng Meng, promise me, don't choose partners from the ocean tribes. They are so stupid, it will lower the average IQ of our family." Gu Mengmeng nodded in agreement. "Don't worry, I am very repulsed by males who don't know how to judge a whore." Elvis had already finished washing the pot and placed it beside a big tree. He then shook off the water on his hands and carried Gu Mengmeng up. Elvis had heard their entire conversation. He could still coexist peacefully with a male who had no ulterior motives towards Gu Mengmeng. He kissed Gu Mengmeng's little face, then said, "Take the kiss of the ocean and let's go. He is hopeless, don't waste time." Carter was really dumbfounded by Gu Mengmeng's family of three. He couldn't get a word in or understand what they were saying, until Elvis said he was not going to care about him. Then he snapped out of his trance and looked at Gu Mengmeng anxiously. "Great messenger, what did I do wrong? Please tell me, I am willing to change. For Melinda, I can change anything." Gu Mengmeng chuckled, "Do you know what your biggest mistake is?" Carter shook his head. Everything he did was to keep Melinda by his side. He didn't feel that he had done anything wrong. Gu Mengmeng, indeed, a person with terminal male cancer will never know that he is beyond cure. Carter was taken aback. He looked down at his own body and frowned. "Am going to die? So I can't give her happiness, right?" Gu Mengmeng thought that communicating with Snake was already the limit of the generation gap, but now it seemed like she was wrong. In the beast world, there was only more difficult communication, not the most difficult. Something like a generation gap, had no limits. Leah chuckled. "Not being able to make the female you like happy is your biggest mistake." Carter nodded in agreement and said, "I know, it's my fault. But I don't know how to change. That's why I'm here to consult Lord Emissary." Leah shook his head and said, "Listening to females other than the ones you like is the second mistake you made." Carter's expression was stiff and somewhat wooden. Listening to Lee's words was like listening to a book from heaven. His mouth was slightly agape and his eyes were blank as he looked at Leah, not understanding what was going on. Leah pointed at Elvis and then at himself. "My Meng Meng liked me first, but he is Meng Meng's first partner. Do you know why?" Kite thought for a moment and said, "Because he's a level 5 orc. You can't beat him." Leah snickered. "You are really outstanding in your stupidity. How could he have been at the 5th level before mating?" Kite slapped his forehead as he recalled the matter of the level 3 boundary. Chapter 768. I thought I was doing it for her own good, so she would definitely forgive me after knowing the truth. I was mentally prepared to accept all the punishments. I thought I was prepared. Leah recalled those days when he was not forgiven. Gu Mengmeng kept calling him her ex-boyfriend in the cave, asking him to maintain his composure and not pester her. Every word was like a sharp claw, tearing at his heart to this day. This pain constantly reminded him not to do anything that would upset Gu Mengmeng. He could not bear the consequences. Raising his head, he looked at Carter as if he had been through it all. Leah said slowly, "All punishments, including her tears and determination. What if the only punishment she can give you is to tell you with tears that she forgives you and doesn't hate you anymore, so that you don't need to disturb her anymore? Are you also prepared to accept it?" All these were clearly just a few words from Leah, but Carter felt as if his chest was being viciously torn apart by something. That pair of clear eyes were filled with tears. It was as if the scene of her saying goodbye was right before his eyes. In that instant, he felt as if every drop of blood in his body had solidified. He froze on the spot, unable to move. Leah chuckled. See, you are not prepared. And you can't bear it either. Carter's temples were throbbing. He was silent for a long time before he found his voice again. Like a drowning man who had grabbed onto a life-saving straw, he said in a trembling voice, "But you were forgiven in the end, didn't you?" Leah looked at the mark on Gu Mengmeng's ear tenderly, his eyes filled with so much joy and treasure. He reached out and caressed Gu Mengmeng's little earlobe, then looked at Carter with some arrogance in his long and narrow eyes, saying, "The difference between you and me is that other than Meng Meng, I will not listen to any other females. Everything I did wrong was all my own idea, while you listened to Dora and hurt Melinda. This is the fundamental difference. Understand? I just don't want Melinda to leave me." Carter was scared witless by Lee's words. There was nothing going on between him and Dora, but why did he feel so guilty after hearing Lee's words? Lee's face was filled with disdain as he sneered. "Oh, your desires are above her happiness. Seems like you don't like her that much." "No, it's not like that." Kite wanted to explain, but he didn't know what to say. Gu Mengmeng smiled. This Carter was still too young to compete with Leah in terms of wits. Waving his hand, he said, "Carter, you must first be clear about what you want. Do you want to keep Melinda by your side, or do you want her to like you, fall in love with you, and accept you?" Kite was at a loss and asked, "Is there a difference?" Gu Mengmeng chuckled and said, "Of course there is. There is a huge difference between voluntary and involuntary. The former represents happiness, while the latter represents torture. How can there be no difference?" Carter said without hesitation, "I want her to be happy." Gu Mengmeng nodded and said, "The first step is to clear her name. Make up for the mistakes you've made in the past, only then will you have the qualifications to stand in front of her and pursue her again." Carter nodded and said, "All right, I will now go back and announce that Melinda never stole anything." "Never." Gu Mengmeng held her forehead as she leaned on Elvis's shoulder and looked at Leah, giving him a pleading look. Chapter 769. Leah brought Carter to one side and guided him. Gu Mengmeng could not bear to continue listening to Carter's words. He looked so smart, but why did he sound like a retard when it came to relationships? Nestled in Elvis's arms, Gu Mengmeng sighed. "Luckily I met you then, or else I would have been angered to death." Elvis's eyes were filled with indulgence and love. He kissed Gu Mengmeng's eyes and whispered in her ear with a hoarse and reserved voice, "Silly girl, I'm the one who should rejoice." That night, Carter brought Leah to listen to his lessons. Wabi-I did not return and was curled up in some tree in the forest. Ian's presence was as low as ever. Meanwhile, Elvis hugged Gu Mengmeng and listened to her count the stars one by one. She told him interesting stories about the constellations that he did not understand. Her voice was so gentle that he could not sleep the entire night. He did not even want to miss the sound of her breathing. The next morning, Wabi-I brought back fresh fruits while Ian strangely brought back many bird eggs. Seeing Gu Mengmeng looking at him as though he was a pervert, he snorted coldly. "Even our eagle owl tribe doesn't have any descendants. How can these uncivilized dumb birds reproduce?" Gu Mengmeng's eyes were filled with disdain. Gu Mengmeng clicked her tongue and sighed at how black-bellied Ian was. His "if I don't have a good time, no one can have a good time" emphasis was too evil. But even so, Gu Mengmeng knew that Ian had gone to retrieve these bird eggs because Leah had instructed him in the morning. Gu Mengmeng was still nestled in Elvis's arms. She did not know why, but she just felt that something had happened to Elvis during the day she went to the deep sea. There was clearly nothing different, but Gu Mengmeng knew that Elvis was very uneasy, as if he was very attached to her. But he did not want to say, so Gu Mengmeng could only choose not to ask. Gu Mengmeng bit on the fruits Wabi-I had brought back and stretched her neck to wait for Leah to cook the bird eggs. The eggs were not cooked yet, but a few familiar faces came up from the sea. Fei Rui was holding Melinda's hand as he ran over. Looking at the smiles on their faces, Gu Mengmeng thought to herself that Carter was really efficient. He had only returned late last night and this morning, he had already cleared Melinda's name. Lord Envoy. Fei Rui and Melinda were the same. Their skin was so fair that Gu Mengmeng could not bear to let them bask in the sun. It was as if the sun could melt them. Meanwhile, Fei Rui and Melinda's cheeks were flushed red. Mermaids did not have sweat glands, so their skin was still dry. However, their panting clearly told Gu Mengmeng how much they wanted to be the first to tell this good news to her. Gu Mengmeng patted Fei Rui's shoulder. "Speak slowly, it's all right." Fei Rui took a deep breath. His cold, star-like eyes shone with a bright light. He was so happy that he almost cried. "My sister is free." Gu Mengmeng maintained a polite smile. Although this news, she had already known about it last night, she still congratulated Marlene happily. She passed one of the fruits in her hands to Marlene and said, "Here, this is for you. To celebrate your freedom." Chapter 770. Gu Mengmeng looked behind her. Indeed, there was a familiar head peeking over from behind the rock. It clearly wanted to stick close to her, but could only watch from afar. It looked rather pitiful. "You, come here for a moment." Gu Mengmeng pointed at the head behind the rock. Carter was taken aback, but still swam out from behind the rock. He transformed into his human form and went ashore. His eyes were fixed on Melinda. Naturally, he didn't miss the way Melinda shivered and hid behind Fei Rui the moment he appeared. She was still afraid of him, great messenger. Carter lowered his head and averted his gaze. He didn't want to see Melinda panicking, but he couldn't help but want to get closer to her. Gu Mengmeng ignored the conflict between the two. She just said to herself, "We want to eat seafood. You and Fei Rui can help me fish some." Carter nodded. Yes. Fei Rui wasn't willing to speak to Carter, but Gu Mengmeng was the messenger of the beast deity. If she hadn't come, Melinda would still be locked up. Although this matter had nothing to do with Gu Mengmeng on the surface, Fei Rui knew that if Gu Mengmeng had not stepped forward, Carter would not have let Melinda go no matter how much evidence they had to prove her innocence. So it was his honor to be able to do something for Gu Mengmeng. Although it was insignificant compared to what Gu Mengmeng had done for him and his sister, it still made him feel better. So even though his partner was Carter, Fei Rui didn't reject Gu Mengmeng's request. He stood up and swam with Carter towards the deep sea. Gu Mengmeng liked pretty girls, especially those who were beautiful and kind. Seeing that Melinda was holding the fruit without eating it, Gu Mengmeng smiled and asked, "You don't like to eat this kind of fruit?" Melinda shook her head. "I have never eaten it before." Gu Mengmeng turned to Wabi. "Is this a fruit that is hard to find?" Wabi pointed to the nearby forest. "There are many of them." Melinda blushed slightly. She lowered her head. "This is my first time coming ashore." Gu Mengmeng grinned and held Melinda's little hand. "I am very honored to be able to accompany you on such a special day." Melinda smiled sweetly. She was a little shy and bashful. "Thank you, great messenger." Gu Mengmeng picked up her fruit and took a bite. Then, she signaled Melinda to have a taste too. The beauty ate with great elegance. That small bite was like kissing a fruit. Looking at the half-eaten fruit in her hand, Gu Mengmeng suddenly started to doubt her own feminine nature. After mating for half a year, had she forgotten to maintain her image in front of Elvis and Leah? Is it really okay to eat like this? Gu Mengmeng thought about it and started to take small bites of the fruit. But Elvis pressed her hand down and pressed the fruit down. Then, he kissed her lips and said, "I like your original appearance. Don't force yourself to learn from others." Gu Mengmeng blushed. She did not expect Elvis to care about such a small detail. Come to think of it, when she was pregnant with Huda and his brothers, Elvis was the one who carried them to the toilet. What kind of pathetic state had he not seen before? However, he had seen her at her worst, most disheveled, and most unkempt, but he still loved her. Chapter 771. Melinda told Gu Mengmeng what had happened last night. It was roughly the same as what Leah had told her. Dora had voluntarily returned the giant fish clan's treasure because she was afraid of the beast deity's curse and confessed to framing Melinda for stealing it. Melinda was imprisoned by the giant fish clan as a slave. Her fate was to be used as a currency to exchange for resources with other tribes. To a female, this was not much of a punishment. After all, she was still a treasure in the hands of other tribes. After all, she was a female. But this cleared Melinda of the crime of stealing, and the giant fish clan could no longer imprison her. Moreover, as compensation for wrongly accusing her, Carter also returned all the territories of the mermaid clan that they had lost to him in a challenge. Everything returned to its original position. It seemed that everything had returned to its original point. But Carter's feelings for Melinda grew stronger every day. And Melinda's fear of Carter also grew stronger. Gu Mengmeng almost burst out laughing after hearing Melinda's description. The beast deity's curse? What the hell was that? So good at making things up. While Gu Mengmeng and Melinda were chatting, Fei Rui and Carter had also returned with seafood. When Gu Mengmeng saw the fish Carter had brought back, 10,000 curses ran through her mind. Yes, she said she wanted to eat seafood and fish. But there was no need for you to bring back a whale, right? Gu Mengmeng's jaw almost dropped to the ground as she watched Carter slowly drag the whale by its tail onto the shore. Big brother, your brain circuit is so king fast. Besides Gu Mengmeng, Melinda was also shocked. Although Carter had not expressed anything when he had dragged the fish onto the shore, Melinda had already inwardly thought of him as cool and cruel. Her little body trembled as she gripped Gu Mengmeng's hand so tightly that her fingertips turned white. Power equals charm. This was definitely a male's hallucination after his brain was caught in a door. Wabi, you can eat that fish. Gu Mengmeng pointed at the whale Carter had brought back. Eat it in the sea. Don't let me see you eating. I am scared. Since Gu Mengmeng didn't call him little shit, Wabi happily walked to Carter's side and dragged the whale back into the sea without another word. Carter had no idea what was going on. But looking at Leah and Gu Mengmeng's disdainful expression and Melinda's fearful expression, he knew, he had messed up again. He only hoped that she would see that he was very strong and could protect her. Why did it backfire? Frustrated, Kate stood on the spot, not knowing what to do. Fei Rui ignored him and sat beside Gu Mengmeng and Melinda. He placed a few shellfish on the ground and said, "These shellfish are very delicious, have a taste." With that said, Fei Rui crushed the shell with a kacha, and the shell immediately shattered into pieces. The flesh of the shell was still squirming, and the scene was somewhat disgusting. Gu Mengmeng sighed and said, "A gentleman stays away from the kitchen." Fei Rui did not understand. He tilted his head and waited for Gu Mengmeng's explanation. Gu Mengmeng looked at his clear eyes, then at the pile of crushed shellfish meat in his hand. She smiled and explained gently, "It means to scram and play at the side." Fei Rui lowered his head like a child who had done something wrong. He thought that Gu Mengmeng didn't like the shellfish and wanted to take it away too. Seeing his aggrieved look, Gu Mengmeng's heart softened. "Put it down, I will handle it." Aside from the topic, Gu Mengmeng, I always thought that Colin was the epitome of inexperience in love. But after meeting you, I finally understand. Haha, being unromantic is just child's play. Carter. What did I do wrong? Chapter 772. She got Leah to start a fire and placed a flat stone slab on top of it. She threw the shells on top to heat them up, and soon, they all opened up. There was nothing dirty in the original marine products. Gu Mengmeng used simple seasonings to marinate them before using tree resin to skewer the shellfish. She had no choice. There were no stainless steel roasting pans here. She could only eat boiled shellfish after skewering them. Boiled oysters or whatever, TSK, not interested. After Gu Mengmeng demonstrated the first skewer, the task of cooking was handed over to Leah. Gu Mengmeng was more interested in the shells themselves. The nameless shells glowed with 5 different colors, giving off a rainbow-like glow under the sunlight. Gu Mengmeng and Melinda each took one and couldn't bear to part with it. Especially when they found a good pearl in one of the shells, the two females were overjoyed, as if they had discovered a new continent. The pearl was also colorful like the shells, but the shape was not very good. It was not a regular pattern, but a little, like a lazy goat's hairstyle. Although pearls of this quality were not considered top quality in the ocean, the two females were extremely rare. Gu Mengmeng drew the pearl left and right on Melinda's body. The size was just right to make an earring. It matched Melinda's face perfectly. She used a tree branch to draw a simple diagram for Melinda. Melinda's eyes almost popped out of her head. Perhaps only Oriton's obsession with food could compare to a girl's obsession with jewelry. The earring was finally completed. This was thanks to Fei Rui's spitting technique. He held the pearl and spat out a droplet of water from his mouth. It was as thin as an embroidery needle and accurately pierced through the spot Gu Mengmeng had pointed out. Gu Mengmeng was overjoyed. She asked for a strand of Melinda's hair to pierce through the hole and tie a dead knot. Then, she skillfully weaved a flower pattern. Gu Mengmeng didn't know which generation's inherited memories told her that the hair of the mermaid tribe was very tough and not easily damaged. Moreover, Melinda's hair was long and of good quality. Using her hair to make an earring was the best match for her ears. Everything was prepared. The last step was to pierce Melinda's ears. Why else would it be said that one would not regret dying for beauty? In order to wear the earring, the petite little girl handed over her ear without hesitation and let Fei Rui spit a drop of water through it. Fei Rui was trembling in fear. What kind of joke was this? Even a slight frown from his precious little sister was enough to make his heart ache. Now she wanted him to attack her? No way, no way. Gu Mengmeng snorted. So useless. Carter, come here. Gu Mengmeng waved her hand. Carter walked over silently and stood beside Gu Mengmeng, his eyes fixed on Melinda. Gu Mengmeng pointed at the center of Melinda's earlobe. Can you pierce a small hole here? Carter frowned and looked at Melinda. You really want to have your ears pierced? Melinda was afraid of Carter and instinctively wanted to hide. But after looking at Gu Mengmeng and then at the pearl earring, she hesitated but still nodded. This was the first time Melinda had asked him to do something. No matter how reluctant he was, Carter would not disappoint her. Chapter 773. Melinda did not know why. This was the person she was most afraid of, but when she heard him say that, she felt strangely at ease. Blushing, Melinda didn't have time to think about anything else when she felt a warm breath on her ear. Instinctively, she shrank her neck to avoid it, but Carter's hand was already on her face. He gently pulled her into his embrace, and the side of her face was pressed against his chest. His heart was beating wildly. He didn't know if it was because he was worried that he had accidentally hurt her, or because she was willing to be so close to him. He only knew that when he saw her blush, his body reacted faster than his brain. He wanted to hug her. He really just wanted to hug her. Melinda did not struggle or resist. She seemed to be in a daze and allowed Carter to hug her for a long time. Fei Rui was unhappy and wanted to separate them, but was held back by Gu Mengmeng. Gu Mengmeng shook her head lightly. Isn't it good to have another reliable person to protect her with you? Fei Rui was stunned for a moment. He carefully observed Carter's and Melinda's expressions before slowly withdrawing his strength and turning to leave. After hugging for a long time, Carter released Melinda. It was not that he had enough, but he did not dare to ask for more. He wanted to hug her and never let go. But if he hugged her any longer, she would angrily push him away. He was prepared to be scolded by Melinda, but his careful gaze met Melinda's momentary disappointment. Maybe she liked his hug. Stunned for a moment, Carter immediately hugged Melinda back into his arms. He would hug her like this until the end of time. However, Melinda had already regained her senses from that momentary chill. She pushed Carter away and walked to Gu Mengmeng's side. She pursed her lips and did not say a word. She hid behind Gu Mengmeng with her head lowered, clearly still resisting Carter. Gu Mengmeng pretended not to see anything. She pulled Melinda along and chatted happily. She helped Melinda put on the pearl earrings and sighed sincerely. He pulled Melinda to the beach and asked her to look at the reflection in the water to see if she was satisfied with the result. However, Melinda's eyes subconsciously peeked at Carter through the reflection in the water. Gu Mengmeng pulled Melinda back and pretended to be nonchalant. Carter, what do you think of this earring? Are you a good match for Melinda? Carter's eyes were still on Melinda's face. Meeting her cautious and expectant gaze, Carter smiled bashfully and dotingly. Very beautiful, very beautiful. Gu Mengmeng clearly saw that Melinda's face had turned red, but she refused to let it go. Then is the earring prettier or Melinda prettier? You have to speak clearly. Kate's expression did not change. Melinda is beautiful. She is the most beautiful female in the world. She is the essence of all things beautiful. Gu Mengmeng smiled and nodded, then pretended to sigh in pity. What a pity, there's only one. If only I could find another pearl that looks exactly the same to make a pair. Carter did not say a word, but Gu Mengmeng recognized his expression. It was the expression Elvis and Leah had every time she said something unintentionally, and Elvis and Leah secretly remembered it. She believed that even if Carter had to turn the entire ocean upside down, he would definitely find another pearl that was exactly the same for Melinda. However, he would leave the future to time. Chapter 774. After resting for 2 days, Fei Rui and Carter brought their tribesmen to fetch Gu Mengmeng to the Forbidden Abyss on the morning of the 3rd day. Compared to the first time they entered the sea, it was a little more extravagant this time. Gu Mengmeng was wrapped up in Wabiai's snake tail, feeling like an emperor leading his officials on a tour with a divine beast. Although this divine beast looked like a piece of *T soaked in water, but she endured it. After all, there were many fishes behind them and it looked rather intimidating. Elvis and Leah also wanted to follow but were rejected by Gu Mengmeng. Although the mermaid tribe's air bubble could allow them to breathe underwater, if they met with any accident and the air bubble burst, they would definitely die at that depth. Moreover, even if the air bubble was fine, the water pressure at the bottom of the sea was also a serious problem. Beasts who lived on land for a long time would be half dead just by going down. Why was Gu Mengmeng fine? Nonsense, she had Snake's Beast King powers and the kiss of the beast deity from her lonely father. Of course she would be fine. When they neared the so-called Forbidden Abyss, Gu Mengmeng finally understood why Fei Rui said the messenger of the beast deity had to come personally. It was clearly a flowing sea, but it was filled with a thick layer of poison. It was as if the poison was continuously seeping out from the depths of the sea, so thick that even the sea could not melt it. Fei Rui and the rest swam to this point and could no longer go any nearer. Their expressions were solemn as if they were suffocating. Gu Mengmeng didn't want to force them, so she asked them to retreat. She and Wabiai could go down alone. Fei Rui was worried, but he also knew that with his powers, he would only cause more trouble if he went down. So he instructed Gu Mengmeng not to force herself, and to retreat if she felt something was wrong. She must not force herself. Gu Mengmeng made a reassuring gesture and asked them to retreat further and not be affected by the poison. Fei Rui and Carter said that they would meet her at the entrance and wait for her to come out. Gu Mengmeng didn't reject them. She just led Wabiai into the deepest part of the pitch-black darkness without any source of light. Gu Mengmeng had inherited Elvis's night vision, so her fear of the dark had already been reduced to its lowest point. But the absolute darkness and the absolute silence still gave her a creepy feeling of uneasiness. Gu Mengmeng instinctively grasped Wabiai's hand, but Wabiai said irritatingly, "Don't you know how strong your claws are? If you break my arm later, you can do it yourself if you encounter any danger." It had to be said that Wabiai's words effectively dispelled Gu Mengmeng's fear. That's right, in the entire beast world, she was already the strongest among the strong. If she met with any danger, she could just release her beast pressure and suppress it. If it was some kind of demon or ghost, didn't she have a lonely old man's father to back her up? *CK, she had someone on top of her too, okay? He was a legitimate second-generation immortal. Because of Snake's tear of the beast deity, Gu Mengmeng's body was now immune to all poisons, because there was nothing more poisonous than the blood in her body. Fighting poison with poison, it was only natural that the weaker side would be completely devoured. However, Wabiai clearly did not possess such strength. The deeper he went, the denser the poisonous fog became. Wabi was starting to feel a little powerless. Gu Mengmeng didn't want Wabi in front of her, so she asked him to return and wait with Fei Rui and the rest. But Wabi said, "If I leave you alone, you can forget about raising your head in front of him for the rest of your life." Digression, yeah, today's update is over. Chapter 775. Gu Mengmeng wanted to say that there was no need to compete in such a place. She had the protection of the kiss of the beast deity and her abilities were not affected in the water. Even without Wabi, it would not be a big problem. But Gu Mengmeng also knew that males had their own pride and dignity. Sometimes, they would view certain things as more important than their own lives. She did not hesitate too much because any further hesitation would only cause Wabi more pain and suffering. Nodding, Gu Mengmeng said, "If you can't hold on, go back immediately. I will not blame you and neither will Snake. On the contrary, if anything happens to you, I will not be able to answer to Snake." Wabi tucked Gu Mengmeng under his armpit and charged into the abyss in his half-beast form. He raised his speed to the maximum, clearly wanting to end the battle as soon as possible. His tightly furrowed brows and a solemn expression that she had never seen before proved that his current condition was not optimistic. But he still gritted his teeth and said, "I don't need you to answer to him about my life." In the poisonous fog in the deep sea, there was nothing but flowing water. Wabi's speed was so fast that Gu Mengmeng could only feel the poisonous fog whizzing past her ears. Her body was sinking rapidly. But how long did she sink? How deep and how far did she sink? How long did she sink? Gu Mengmeng could not be bothered. But when Wabi's body finally stopped, Gu Mengmeng could clearly see that the scales on his tail had already been corroded by the poisonous fog, revealing the flesh underneath. There were also many festering spots on his chest. It was not fatal, but it was still a ghastly sight. Pfft, Wabi spat out a mouthful of saliva that was mixed with blood. He raised his hand to wipe it off and laughed as though he did not know his limits. "You want to compete in poison with me? In this life, only Snake is more poisonous than me." Seeing his stubborn look, Gu Mengmeng retracted her hand that was about to support him. Sometimes, she had to know how to hold back her pity to save a man's face. Gu Mengmeng smiled and patted the parts of Wabi's body that were still intact. "Not bad, I thought you couldn't hold on any longer. TSK, the only one who can kill me in this world has already been destroyed by you," Wabi said with unclear emotions before surveying the surroundings. The poisonous fog hovered above their heads like a thick, dark cloud, while the area under the poisonous fog was unbelievably clean. Gu Mengmeng consciously sucked in a mouthful of seawater and swallowed it, only to realize that it was not salty. In other words, the part under the poisonous fog was not seawater but freshwater, and it was the kind of freshwater that was similar to mineral water. This was very strange. Gu Mengmeng did not know what kind of topography would cause such a situation to occur. Could it be related to the poisonous fog? However, Gu Mengmeng did not have much interest in surveying the geography of the seabed. She just walked along the path that was paved with mud from the seabed. Speaking of which, it was very strange. There was clearly still water below, but there was no water flowing. It was clearly the same seabed mud, but there was a forest path that formed a sharp contrast with the mud beside it, as if it was guiding her forward. After taking 2 steps, Gu Mengmeng realized something was wrong. The speed at which her feet sank was getting faster and faster, but it was getting harder and harder to pull out. Underwater swamp? Gu Mengmeng frowned and wanted to swim across the sky. Chapter 776. Gu Mengmeng tried to walk around from the side of the small path, but she realized that the suction force from the side was stronger. She had just placed her feet lightly on the ground when there was already a force sucking her in, almost sucking her in. Wabi used his snake tail to lift Gu Mengmeng up onto his head. He had already transformed into his original form. The huge snake head was as big as a train and Gu Mengmeng sat on it stably. The thick snake body slithered along the path like a fish in water. Gu Mengmeng giggled. Luckily Wabi had insisted on coming down with her. Otherwise, she really didn't know how to get down. "Little shit, I didn't expect you to be so reliable. Gu Mengmeng patted Wabiai's head. Wabiai stuck out his tongue and said to Gu Mengmeng in snake language, "If you call me little shit again, do you believe I won't throw you into the mud?" Gu Mengmeng shrugged. "I don't believe you." Wabiai gritted his teeth and didn't reply. Because, he didn't believe it either. Because of Wabiai's cheat-like nature, they reached the end of the path after about half an hour. It was rather boring and nothing happened. Then, Gu Mengmeng was even more confused. The ocean behind them was like a huge water ball, rippling with water, but the light was blocked off. And the place they were at now was actually dry and filled with air. It was not an underwater cave or any other land. They were at the bottom of the ocean, but the ocean was behind them, as if there was an invisible wall of water blocking off the ocean. Not a single drop of water flowed in. Wabiai had also transformed back into his human form. And the miraculous thing was that his injuries had actually healed. Not only that, Gu Mengmeng even felt that his skin had become better than before. She had heard that there was a sea mud face mask that was selling well, but she didn't expect the effects to be so good. Gu Mengmeng secretly decided that she would dig some up when she returned later. It would be good to give it to her friends and family as local specialties, right? Wabiai also noticed the changes on his body, but he didn't take it to heart. He just urged Gu Mengmeng to hurry on. Not long after, Gu Mengmeng saw a huge clam shell. Yes, just a dried clam shell. As expected, not all demons and ghosts could live for more than 1,000 years. Gu Mengmeng went forward and wanted to pry open the clamshell to take a look. But the moment her hand touched the clamshell, it cracked and shattered into pieces. Was it eroded by the wind? Gu Mengmeng shrugged her shoulders helplessly. She pushed the shredded clam shell to one side and found a pearl the size of a fist. It was black and glowed with a dark green light. It was faint and gave off a mysterious vibe. Gu Mengmeng weighed it in her hand and looked around to see if there was anything else. She thought to herself, was this the kiss of the ocean? A black pearl? It was a little big, but no matter how he looked at it, there was nothing special about it. The luminous pearl that Elvis had given her to play with previously was not much smaller than this. She had crushed it just like that. It did not seem to be that rare. Gu Mengmeng held it in her hands for a long time, but still could not think of anything else. If the kiss of the ocean was not referring to the shattered clam shell, then it could only be referring to this pearl. And on the way back, Gu Mengmeng truly experienced the awesomeness of this pearl. Chapter 777. Gu Mengmeng was stunned by the scene before her the moment she entered the poisonous fog from the freshwater. The poisonous mist swirled, and like the drain of a bathtub that had been opened, it gradually disappeared from the drain. And this drain was the black pearl in Gu Mengmeng's hand, the kiss of the ocean. What the heck? Don't judge a pearl by its cover. Gu Mengmeng stared in bewilderment as the poisonous fog swirled into a huge whirlpool like a tornado. Then, the thinnest part of the fog was rapidly sucked into the black pearl. She didn't know how to react. After a long while, when Gu Mengmeng regained her senses, the poisonous fog had already thinned to the point where she could vaguely see what was going on 3 to 5 meters away. Amidst the dilution of the seawater, there was a sense of ink-stained beauty. Gu Mengmeng thought about how Wabiai had to swim for half a day to bring her down. No matter how powerful the pearl was, it would take some time to absorb the fog. It would be too much of a waste of time to swim back after it was done. Not to mention Faye, Roy and Carter, Elvis and Leah didn't know what was going on down there. Wouldn't they go crazy seeing her taking so long to return? So Gu Mengmeng leaned over to Wabiai and said, "Let's swim back as we swim. I don't think we can finish absorbing the fog in such a short time." Wabiai had originally come with Gu Mengmeng. He wasn't interested in the poisonous fog, nor the kiss of the ocean. So when he heard Gu Mengmeng's words, he nodded and held Gu Mengmeng under his arm as he swam back slowly. He even intentionally swam towards the areas with the thickest poisonous fog so that the pearl could absorb the fog faster. Before they could swim out of the poisonous fog, Gu Mengmeng smelled blood. She instinctively frowned. Could it be that the giant fish tribe and the mermaid tribe had gotten into a fight again? TSK, why were these fish more aggressive than lions and tigers? Gu Mengmeng was worried that Fei Rui would be at a disadvantage, so she asked Wabiai to speed up. The closer they got, the more Gu Mengmeng felt that something was wrong. The sounds of fighting were rather loud. It didn't seem like something Fei Rui and Carter could create. After all, with Fei Rui's small physique, he was nothing in front of Kite. It was a one-sided abuse. It was impossible for him to cause such a ruckus. Furthermore, Carter still wanted to woo Melinda, so he couldn't kill Fei Rui. If he really beat Fei Rui up, then he could forget about developing a relationship with Melinda that was more than friendship in this lifetime. Gu Mengmeng choked on her saliva as she charged out of the poisonous fog. It was not a problem with the seawater, but the blood content of the seawater was too high. Gu Mengmeng almost doubted her own eyes. What was going on? Did he swim into the burial pit of the sea race? Why were there so many corpses of the sea race? Although they had been beaten back to their original forms and were just fish, Gu Mengmeng could clearly tell that they were not ordinary fish, but from the ocean tribe. But after returning to their original forms, Gu Mengmeng could not recognize any of them. The corpses of the sea folk were different from those of ordinary fish. When ordinary fish died, their corpses would float up, but the corpses of the sea folk would sink. After the poisonous fog thinned, the corpses would slowly sink into the poisonous fog. Their bodies were already wounded and they did not have a strong resistance to poison. As a result, even after 80% of the poisonous fog had been absorbed, their corpses continued to rot in the poisonous fog until not even their bones were left. Chapter 778. Wabiai led Gu Mengmeng and continued to swim upstream. They could already see people fighting. Huge waves surged beneath the surface of the sea. The battle between the sea tribes was even more brutal than that between the wild beasts on land. Gu Mengmeng tried her best to distinguish between friend and foe, and finally found Fei Rui and Carter under the guidance of that head of golden hair. At that moment, the two of them were being attacked by another member of the sea tribe. From the looks of it, that person should also be third level. It was hard to say who would win if he fought Carter head-on, but Carter had to deal with him while protecting Melinda at the same time. It was inevitable that he was being attacked from both sides. Gu Mengmeng quickly swam over and turned to protect Fei Rui and his sister behind her. She faced the enemy's attack head-on and smiled coldly. She didn't even raise her hand. The attacker didn't hesitate at all because of Gu Mengmeng's appearance. Not only did his movements not slow down, they even became fiercer. In just an instant, he adjusted his angle slightly. He was going to take Gu Mengmeng's life. However, before that sword-like nose could reach within 3 steps of Gu Mengmeng, it stopped abruptly. The attacker frowned and suddenly turned back to look. His heart skipped a beat and his face contorted in shock. Fear contorted his face and he didn't even have time to shout for help before half of his body was bitten off by Wabiai. Blood spread across the sea like a red spider lily blooming in the sea. It was demonic and strange, carrying with it a strong aura of death. It was so beautiful that it was suffocating. Wabiai threw away the half-fish wrapped in his snake tail in disgust. Then, he watched in disgust as it slowly sank into the poisonous fog of the abyss, gradually rotting and dissipating. Twisting his neck, he scanned the surroundings. That gaze was just like looking at food. Great messenger. Fei Rui grasped Melinda's hand and pushed her to Gu Mengmeng's side. Great messenger, please help me take care of my sister. If we all die here today, please bring her back to Saint Nazir. Even if she becomes partners with a land beast, it's fine as long as she survives. As he said that, Fei Rui glanced at Carter. Carter pursed his lips but didn't say a word. The other party had come prepared. They had concentrated their attacks on Melinda from the start, forcing him to stay by her side to protect her. He could only watch helplessly as his people were scattered by the other party and killed one by one. Now that the giant fish tribe had suffered heavy losses, it was doubtful if they could even survive to the end, much less protect Melinda. He wanted to have her, but compared to his own wish, her survival was more important. She was so beautiful and kind that no matter how vulgar the land orcs were, they would still take pity on her. If it was the tribe of the messenger of the beast deity, she would have a good life. Clenching his fists tightly, Carter slowly took a step forward, ready to fight. It was the sorrow and heroism of a warrior who would never return. But just as he took a step forward, his waist tightened. Melinda hugged Kate's waist from behind and said in a nasal voice, "I'm not leaving. I want to be with Kate. Even if we die together." Chapter 779. Carter and Melinda had no idea what Gu Mengmeng was saying. They only saw her gently nudge the three of them away from the battlefield, before instructing, "All members of the giant fish tribe and mermaid tribe, retreat behind your tribe leaders." As soon as he finished speaking, the scattered clansmen retreated in a sorry state. The enemies were intimidated by Wabi-Ai and didn't dare to move. They could only watch helplessly as they left. "Is there no one else on our side?" Gu Mengmeng turned back and asked. Carter scanned the surroundings and nodded. Gu Mengmeng smiled slyly. "Children, it's time to eat." As soon as he finished speaking, countless water snakes surged out from all directions and surrounded the battlefield. Then, they gradually tightened the encirclement and gathered the enemies again and again. Those who attempted to break out of the encirclement or escape would immediately be bitten by the agile water snakes for a second. In less than 3 seconds, they would no longer have the strength to struggle. Then, the water snakes would bite their heads and slowly swallow their entire bodies into their stomachs. The others didn't dare to escape anymore. They cowered and moved closer to the center. And in the center, waiting for them was the beast form Wabi-Ai. His bloody mouth was wide open, as if waiting for them to jump into his mouth. Retreat. There was no way out. Attack. There was a huge disparity in power. It was supposed to be a sure-win situation, but the moment that female appeared, the tables were turned. Damn it, when did these snakes appear? All the enemies were surrounded by the snakes like sardines in a can. With Wabi-Ai's mouth, he would probably finish them all in 2 mouthfuls. "Wait a minute." Gu Mengmeng chuckled and gestured for him to stop. The snake beast's encirclement stopped shrinking and Wabi-Ai also transformed back into his half-beast form out of boredom. He used his tail to sweep up the person who had just spoken and threw him in front of Gu Mengmeng. Fish in the water would never be in such a sorry state. Although he was thrown out, he still landed steadily in front of Gu Mengmeng. He straightened his body and looked rather arrogant. "Greetings, great messenger." Gu Mengmeng sized it up and chuckled. "Io, so there are stray beasts in the sea too." That person stood up straight. It was not strange that his identity as a stray beast had been exposed. After all, although his side had the numbers of a tribe, they were not united. On land, tribes lived together, but in the ocean, most tribes were united. Furthermore, the females in the tribe would not mate with outsiders to ensure the purity of the tribe's bloodline. This was also one of the reasons why Melinda was so resistant and evasive when Kate expressed her desire to woo her, even though she had saved Kate. Although the stray beasts are beast men abandoned by the beast deity, the beast deity should not have sent the great messenger to kill us all, right? I wonder why the great emissary wants to interfere in our dispute today. That person was rather strong-willed. He didn't think that it was wrong for him to initiate a massacre. After all, this world was ruled by the strong, and it was the right thing to do. Gu Mengmeng smiled at the person in front of her. "Of course the beast deity did not order me to kill you all. Otherwise, do you think you still have the chance to talk nonsense with me?" Gu Mengmeng slowly and appropriately released a bit of pressure. It was very subtle and not a lot, but it was enough to make people shiver. The pressure of a beast king. That person gritted his teeth and lowered his head in submission. The reason was simply because he was submissive to the strong and had a deep-rooted fear of a superior. Aside from the topic, explain why there were clearly water snakes around but no one came out to rescue them just now. These water snakes were brought out by Wabi-Ai. Since Wabi-Ai did not say anything, Gu Mengmeng did not intend for them to appear from the start. After all, the sea tribe seemed to be very afraid of snakes. She did not want to create panic. Gu Mengmeng did not expect someone to attack her the moment she went down to retrieve a pearl, so she did not give the order to protect them. And snakes were cold-blooded by nature. To them, the life and death of others was just a trivial matter. They would not care. Chapter 780. There was still a bunch of weaklings behind her. After the previous battle with the stray beasts, Gu Mengmeng already knew the importance of controlling her emotions. She had been working hard to control her beast pressure over this period of time, and had achieved some success. Seeing that the person who came out to negotiate had given in, there was no need for her to continue pressuring him. After all, what if Melinda was scared to death before the stray beasts? As for why I want to interfere in your dispute, you have to ask yourself. Gu Mengmeng smiled condescendingly. Don't tell me that you stray beasts who have been banished by the various tribes just happened to meet them and wanted to exterminate them when you passed by. Why not? Stray beasts do not follow the rules. That person was a little guilty, but still forced himself to look calm. Gu Mengmeng replied with an "oh." So stray beasts do not follow the rules. All right then, let's leave the stray beasts to them to settle. Gu Mengmeng took a step forward and slapped that person's shoulder, sending him back into the water snake's encirclement. Gu Mengmeng's strength was so strong that even a fish could not resist the force. When he could barely steady himself, he felt a pain in his lower body before he could say another word. Turning his head, he realized that his lower body had already entered Wabiai's mouth. The snake's venomous eyes were vertical, emitting a chill that made one's entire body shiver. But he did not even have the chance to beg for mercy before he was swallowed into Wabiai's mouth and died. If it was in the past, Gu Mengmeng would definitely be a little afraid when faced with such a scene. But after inheriting Snake's memories, she was very clear on one thing. That was to be merciful to one's enemy was to be cruel to oneself. She had already heard the water snake's report. These stray beasts had planned to kill Carter, Fei Rui and the rest, then disguise themselves as them. When Gu Mengmeng emerged from the abyss, they would suddenly attack and snatch the kiss of the ocean. But they didn't expect a few things. Firstly, the poisonous fog didn't kill Wabiai, nor did it weaken Gu Mengmeng. Secondly, they underestimated Fei Rui, Carter and the rest. They didn't expect that they would rather risk their lives to stay here and provide support for Gu Mengmeng. They were clearly not powerful, but none of them tried to escape. If Gu Mengmeng came back later, looking at the less than 20 people left behind, Gu Mengmeng's heart was bleeding. How majestic was the scene when they arrived. In less than half a day, there were less than 20 people left. Gu Mengmeng hugged Fei Rui's arm and grinned. Our little shit looks ferocious when he eats. Don't scare Melinda. Let's return to the shore first. Fei Rui and Carter turned back to look at Wabiai. The absolute disparity in strength was on full display in front of him. The stray beasts that had been tearing at their tribesmen earlier were now coiled around Wabiai by the water snake. It was as if they had been sent to the dragon's pool and had lost all will to resist. There was only a desolate look on their faces, clearly waiting for death. Such a scene was not suitable for females to watch. Chapter 781. The moment she broke through the water, the ripples on the surface of the sea shattered the afterglow of the setting sun. The orange-red light shone on her body, making her look like a warrior returning from a blood-soaked battle, exuding an inexplicable sense of heroism. Elvis rushed to the shore and pulled Gu Mengmeng over from Fei Rui's hands. He used his chest to warm her up and scanned her body with his X-ray eyes. He only heaved a sigh of relief after confirming that she was unharmed from head to toe. Leah wrapped Gu Mengmeng up in a beast skin that was already warmed up. He looked up and did a head count. He frowned slightly but didn't ask anything. When they had left, there had been a huge crowd. But when they returned, there were only 2 or 3 of them left. Fei Rui and Carter were still bleeding, while Melinda looked haggard and there were over 20 people behind them. It was easy to guess what had happened without asking. Leah and Elvis were well aware of how much Gu Mengmeng valued human lives. They didn't want her to shoulder all these lives on her own. They observed Gu Mengmeng carefully. Seeing that she wasn't too affected, they felt a little more at ease. But what they didn't know was that Gu Mengmeng could already control her emotions well. It wasn't that she was numb to death, but because she knew that the dead were gone. She had to look forward, she had to be brave. Only then would the people around her not be affected by her depression. Think about how her emotions had tormented Elvis and Leah the last time. She had to love her own men. She couldn't possibly keep crying and worrying Elvis and Leah every time something happened, could she? Gu Mengmeng spread out the black pearl in her hands for Elvis and Leah to see, saying, "This thing is quite rare. I want to go down again tomorrow to suck up all the poisonous fog that has not been sucked dry, in case it pollutes the water source." What poisonous fog? Elvis's heart twitched as he asked coldly. Gu Mengmeng explained the situation at the bottom of the sea, including how she went down, how she obtained the kiss of the ocean, what she had encountered on the way back, and what Wabi was doing when he didn't follow up. Elvis and Leah were trembling with fear. They gritted their teeth and wanted nothing more than to strangle this troublemaker. Why did she run to wherever there was danger? The poisonous fog was so thick that even Wabi could not withstand it, and she dared to rush in without blinking? With her delicate skin, could she be more resistant to corrosion than Wabi's snake scales? No matter how Gu Mengmeng explained that she was fine, Elvis and Leah were sure that she had been corroded by the poisonous fog to the extent that a layer of her skin had been peeled off. Well, no matter what, I've gotten the kiss of the ocean back. But Gu Mengmeng's gaze landed on Carter's and Fei Roy's faces, then back at Melinda, who was still in a state of shock. The Mermaid Clan and Giant Fish Clan suffered great losses in order to receive me. I cannot just leave like this. Leah said while wiping her hair, "I don't care about other things, but don't mention anything about going into the sea again." Gu Mengmeng turned her head and protested, "I still want to take in the fog, how can I not go into the sea?" Leah did not back down. "Let Wabi absorb the poisonous fog with this stupid pearl. You stay on the shore obediently." Gu Mengmeng said, "I won't." Leah chuckled, his gaze gentle and affectionate. He whispered into Gu Mengmeng's ear, "You have to believe. Elvis and I have 100 ways to make you lose the energy to go into the sea again. Do you want to try?" Chapter 782. What kind of joke was that? Try? She was not stupid. Just Elvis alone could easily make her unable to get out of bed for 3 days. Now with Leah, if these two shameless fellows really went all out to teach her a lesson, she would really be dismembered on the bed. Seeing Gu Mengmeng admit defeat, Leah smiled regretfully. He hooked Gu Mengmeng's little chin and said in a slightly resentful tone, "I still wanted to try forcing Polly. What a pity." Gu Mengmeng blushed and pushed Leah away. She then looked at Fei Roy and Carter and said, "There are only so many of you left. It is not practical to split into 2 tribes. Why don't we merge?" Fei Roy doted on his younger sister. He could see that Melinda's feelings towards Carter had changed and he could not bear to disappoint his sister. And Carter was even more so. He could give up his life for Melinda. What else did he have to protect? But there had never been a mixed tribe in the ocean. Although there were only over 20 mermaids and giant fish tribes left, they did not know whether to call themselves the mermaids tribe or the giant fish tribe. Melinda was also in a difficult position. She obviously hoped that her brother and Carter could become a family. She did not want to leave either of them. But it was a heavy topic to decide on which tribe to make disappear. No matter what she chose, one side would be hurt. This was not something she wanted to see. So Melinda took a step forward and looked at Gu Mengmeng. She said timidly, "The great messenger saved all of our lives today. She is our benefactor. We are willing to listen to the great messenger and merge the 2 tribes together. But as for the name, could we trouble the great messenger to help us decide on it?" Gu Mengmeng looked at Melinda and felt a sense of pity for her. She was really different from those coquettish bitches outside. Even if girls saw her, they wouldn't think that her delicateness was fake. Instead, they would really want to hold her in the palm of their hands and protect her. It was the kind of feeling that any girl in front of her would want to become a strong woman and not let others bully her. Gu Mengmeng thought that if she could give birth to a daughter one day, she would definitely send her to Melinda to be her godmother and let her raise her. She would also raise a well-bred socialite like Melinda. Melinda was practically the epitome of what all mothers in the world called other people's daughters. It was 2F** king rare. Gu Mengmeng could not resist Melinda's request. Zhang Xian nodded and pondered for a long time. However, when it came to naming things, the more cautious one was, the less one would be able to come up with an idea. Gu Mengmeng thought for a while and asked Leah, what would God's blessing be translated into the beast world's language? Leah replied, bridges. Gu Mengmeng felt that it sounded rather nice, so she turned to look at Carter and Fei Rui. What do the two of you think? This name was too big. To be honest, not to mention the fact that there were only 20 people in this tribe, even if there were 2,000 people, no one would dare to call out such an arrogant name. God's blessing, you don't like it? Gu Mengmeng looked at the strange expressions on Fei Rui and Carter's faces. It did not look like they did not like it or like it. Instead, they looked a little scared. Chapter 783. Why should I be angry? Gu Mengmeng was at a loss. Fei Rui lowered his head. You clearly didn't receive the beast deity's blessings, yet you used such a name. This is disrespectful to him. Gu Mengmeng chuckled. Who said you didn't receive the beast deity's blessings? Ah. Fei Rui looked up at Gu Mengmeng in a daze. His sparkling eyes shone with a glimmer of hope. Gu Mengmeng pulled Melinda over and planted a light kiss on her forehead. It was just like how the beast deity had kissed her forehead in the dream realm. Gu Mengmeng said with a sense of blessing, you all risked your lives to protect the beast deity's daughter. How could he not bless you all? Melinda blushed all the way to her neck from Gu Mengmeng's kiss. It had nothing to do with love or hate. It was just a kind of excitement. It was as if you were suddenly invited to a meeting by the premier of a country. Not only did the premier not put on airs or keep a distance, he even shook hands with you and said, child, you did very well in your exams. I am praising you on behalf of the country. If it were you, you would also blush. Gu Mengmeng looked at Fei Rui and Carter. She smiled. What do the two of you think? If you don't like this name, you can give me a name you like. I have no objections. After all, this is your own tribe. You have the right to name yourselves. Fei Rui and Carter exchanged glances. Then, they bowed to Gu Mengmeng. Bridges will forever follow the great messenger. I will be your most reliable servant in the ocean. Actually, Gu Mengmeng didn't intend to recruit servants. Although she liked a senior from the swimming club, she wasn't that passionate about swimming. Now that she had taken the kiss of the ocean, she probably wouldn't return to the beach for no reason. But after she left, it would be difficult for this small tribe of over 20 people to survive in the ocean. If her name could bring them some protection, then so be it. Nodding her head, Gu Mengmeng finally accepted the loyalty of the Bridges tribe to her. Fei Rui was originally the prince of the tribe. He should be the next tribe leader. Carter was the first to speak. He gently held Melinda's little hand, his determined eyes filled with tenderness. He had given all his tenderness to Melinda and had nothing left for the world. I just want to stay by Melinda's side. I don't care about anything else. Fei Rui shook his head and said, the strength of the patriarch directly determines the strength of a tribe. I know that I'm unable to support the prosperity of a tribe like Bridges. You should be the patriarch. Although I don't like you, I can't deny your strength and talent. Furthermore, my sister is a princess after all. How can her first partner be a mediocre person? Carter still wanted to say something, but Fei Rui suddenly laughed. Without giving him a chance to speak, Fei Rui continued, also, after you have mated, I want to return to Saint Nazir with the great messenger. When he said this, everyone present was shocked. Elvis scooped Gu Mengmeng back into his arms. His powerful aura engulfed everyone, making them want to kneel on the ground. His face darkened and he looked like he was about to tear Fei Roy apart. What do you want? Fei Roy was trembling in fear. His clear eyes were filled with grievance. He looked like he was about to cry. I want to learn the Great Messenger's new skills, and bring those magical skills back to the ocean. Aside from the topic, today's update has ended. Chapter 784. Gu Mengmeng smacked Elvis. He's still a child, why are you scaring him? Look at how scared he is, he's about to cry. Elvis was rather satisfied with Fei Roy's answer, so when Gu Mengmeng said that, Elvis did not say anything else. He just retracted his pressure and said calmly, as long as he doesn't have any improper thoughts, he won't meet with any undeserved misfortune. Fei Roy's eyes were filled with disbelief. This farce ended just like that. But Gu Mengmeng still didn't know how powerful the Bridges tribe would become in the near future. After all, she had neglected the number of fish that could be born in a single birth. Gu Mengmeng didn't attend Melinda and Carter's wedding. After all, there weren't any unnecessary formalities here. It was a simple and crude wedding where they directly consummated their marriage. Although Gu Mengmeng had already given birth to 4 children, she still held a conservative attitude when it came to observing other people's mating process. Eavesdropping was too exciting. She didn't want it. So Gu Mengmeng bade farewell to everyone at the seaside. Fei Roy stayed behind to wait for Carter and Melinda to mate before returning to Saint Nazaire, while Gu Mengmeng and the rest returned the way they came. Gu Mengmeng originally wanted Wabi to return to the Snake King Valley directly, but Wabi had a lazy expression and didn't respond. Gu Mengmeng knew that he was still worried about her. He was afraid that if anything happened to her, he wouldn't be able to answer to Snake. But even though she was already so powerful that she didn't need to fear anyone, Wabi still treated her like a parent. Gu Mengmeng felt helpless, but she didn't dislike it either. Sometimes, she even had the illusion that Wabi was like her biological brother. He was impudent, but he would still stand in front of her when she was in danger. No matter how powerful she was, he still didn't think she could face any difficulties or dangers. This feeling was pretty good. After all, in the beast world, males only treated females with the intention of mating. But Wabi was an exception. As for flaws, this brother of hers was a full 800 years older than her. TSK, the age difference was a little too big. The journey back was not as smooth as when they had come. Every so often, Gu Mengmeng could sense that someone was observing them from the shadows. However, it was obvious that they were afraid of Wabi and Elvis's aura and didn't dare to reveal themselves. Gu Mengmeng chuckled. This must be, after the kiss of the ocean? Heh, how convenient. Wabi said lazily, this is the first time I've seen food following me. I don't even have to go far to hunt. Gu Mengmeng rolled her eyes. Can you not be so hardcore? Before they make a move, we can't make the first move. Wabi clicked his tongue impatiently, expressing his disdain. Gu Mengmeng did not back down and snorted back. It was night, and all was quiet. A few black figures tiptoed in the night sky and slowly approached the sleeping Gu Mengmeng. He was secretly delighted in his heart. Although he was powerful, he was a little too arrogant and conceited. He actually slept so soundly. Wasn't he a little too careless? One hand slowly reached towards Gu Mengmeng, wanting to take away the kiss of the ocean from her. However, before his hand could even touch her clothes, he felt a sharp pain. He looked down and saw that the back of his hand had already started to rot. Chapter 785. Tisk, after a soft sound, the black figure with a broken hand was thrown away. Leah swayed his large tail and said with a disappointed expression, "Do you have any professional ethics? Can you make such a loud noise when stealing? I can't even pretend not to see it. So unprofessional, you let me down." The few people who came along looked at each other. What did he mean? Gu Mengmeng sat up from Elvis's arms. Elvis's blue eyes were filled with love as he looked at her. He rubbed her little head and said, "In the end, I still disturbed your sleep, right?" Gu Mengmeng sighed and said, "I knew they were following me, I couldn't sleep well." Elvis kissed Gu Mengmeng's little face lightly and said, "It's all right, I'll settle it soon." With that, Elvis stood up and walked step by step towards the few thieves who disturbed Gu Mengmeng's sleep. Even stray beasts have rules. Elvis stretched his neck to the left and right as a warm-up. In a flash, he grabbed the rat beast that was trying to escape and threw it into the sky. A huge eagle owl flew past at a low altitude, and its two claws that were like metal pincers dug into the rat beast's flesh, directly throwing it into the sky. A cry of agony could be heard from 300 meters away, followed by scattered pieces of flesh falling from the sky. A gust of wind blew past and the eagle owl circled in the sky before landing steadily on the ground. He already looked like a sickly young man, his face as white as the moonlight and without a trace of life. His gaze was cold and not sharp, but it was as if he was strangling the throat of the person being stared at, causing fear to rise in one's heart. And all this happened in just 3 to 5 seconds. Taking another step forward, Elvis was like Satan in the dark night, emitting a dangerous aura around him. He was like the king of hell that could not be disobeyed. His words rang in the night sky, like a divine decree from Azura, sending chills down one's spine and making one submit. "You can take it by force, but you can't steal it. And you guys have broken this rule." One of the stray beasts was so intimidated by this aura that his legs turned to jelly. He retreated and wanted to escape, but suddenly, he seemed to have kicked something and a shiver shot up from the bottom of his feet. He did not even have the courage to look back. The snake's cold tongue licked his neck, and a lazy and slow voice rang in his ears, carrying with it an indescribable malice and ridicule. "Supper? It doesn't look very delicious." Before he could even scream out in pain, his lower body had already been tightly wrapped by the thick snake tail, while his upper body was already in the snake's mouth. The remaining 3 ambushers exchanged glances and quickly locked onto their target, Leah. Although Ian and Leah were 3rd-level orcs, they did not have much of an advantage against land beasts that could fly. Meanwhile, the fox, who looked like a show-off, was obviously the easiest person to defeat in this team. With a sudden movement, the 3 ambushers charged towards Leah with all their might. But Leah chuckled and pointed at his own nose nonchalantly. "I'm being belittled." With a turn, Leah easily dodged the first claw that attacked him. His furry large tail swept across that person's face playfully, with a strong sense of provocation. Chapter 786. The second stray beast that attacked Leah was grabbed by the wrist by Leah. With a snap, his arm was dislocated. It was not forcefully broken, but from the joints. The flesh was still connected but the bones were broken. That arm was like a pendulum that had lost its power, hanging down casually. "TSK TSK TSK, stretching out your claws in front of the witch doctor. Looks like you really don't want your claws anymore." Leah nimbly ducked under the other arm of the second stray beast and hid behind his back. At this moment, the third stray beast's claws had already pierced through the chest of the second stray beast and was heading straight for Leah's throat. Luckily, Leah was not sticking close to the second stray beast's back. Instead, he was 1.5 steps away, so the third stray beast's blood-stained hand missed. He retracted it and threw the second stray beast's corpse onto the ground without any guilt. Leah patted his own chest. "Aya, you scared me to death. I almost got touched by you. TSK, so annoying. Our Meng Meng doesn't like others touching me." There was only one of the 3 stray beasts left, and it was the only 4th-level orc among the 3. Given Lee's current abilities, it was very dangerous to go against him. In order not to be attacked from both sides, Leah had decided to get rid of the 2 3rd-level beasts first. But even if it was a one-on-one battle, it was still very difficult to retaliate with the difference in levels. Apart from Gu Mengmeng, he did not care about anyone else's life or death. Ian wanted to step forward to help Leah but was held down by his shoulder by Elvis. Ian looked at Elvis in confusion, but Elvis turned to look at Gu Mengmeng. With Gu Mengmeng's current abilities, helping Leah was just a matter of beckoning her finger. But she did not move at all. She just clenched her fists tightly and stared at Lee's battle. She did not even have the intention of asking Elvis to help Leah. Then, Elvis's gaze was gentle. The corners of his lips curled up into a beautiful curve. Leah had been seen through. The stray beast's fangs pressed towards Lee's spine. If he bit down, Leah would be crippled even if he did not die. Leah, I won't allow you to get hurt. Gu Mengmeng sat on the spot. Her voice seemed like a slight ripple, but it could not conceal the waves hidden within. Her voice was trembling. She was afraid. This knowledge made Leah hesitate. Should he continue pretending? If the way he did it for her good made her worry, then, would he still persist? No, you can't. Because he had already hurt her once, for her own good, he absolutely could not let it happen a second time. With a sweep of its fluffy tail, it sent the stray beast flying. The tip of his foot touched the ground lightly, but his entire body bounced up as if he had stepped on a spring. In an instant, he landed behind the stray beast that had been sent flying and kicked his lumbar vertebrae. The huge impact and Lee's kick caused the stray beast's spine to crack. He flew out in a strange manner, just like a broken doll that did not receive the slightest bit of pity. Then, a layer of moonlight enveloped Lee's body, making him look like an elf in the dark night. The bloodstains on his body were not hideous, instead, they looked like poppies blooming on the other shore, exuding a fatal temptation. Chapter 787. Gu Mengmeng cupped Lee's face and gave him a deep kiss. It was a lingering kiss. Leah, congratulations on leveling up. Leah didn't reply and just hugged Gu Mengmeng in his arms. This little one was too shrewd now. It was getting harder and harder to deceive her. But this difficulty made him feel an unprecedented sense of bliss. She was paying attention to him like this. She didn't say anything but she knew everything. After half the night, coupled with the blood and corpses all over the ground, it looked like a slaughterhouse. There was no way she could sleep in this place. Elvis carried Gu Mengmeng in his arms and used a beast skin to cover her head to let her catch up on her sleep. Meanwhile, the few males continued their journey towards Saint Nazaire. It was normal for males to not sleep for a few days and nights. They had to stop and rest every night just to take care of Gu Mengmeng's routine. Although Gu Mengmeng didn't need to do anything in the middle of the night, she was still very nervous. Now that she was at ease, her deep sleepiness couldn't be dispelled no matter what. She slept all the way until noon when she was woken up by hunger. When the sun was at its hottest, it was the most torturous for Wabi. He lay lazily on the tree, his head drooping, not wanting to talk to anyone. He did not sleep, nor did he move. He just sat there like a rubber snake. Although Ian could fly, his strength was at its peak at night. During the day, he looked even more lethargic and listless, as if a gust of wind could blow him over. He was a male, but he looked as if he was suffering from anemia due to menstruation for 30 days a month. She didn't know what was going on. Seeing how weak he looked like a little sister in the forest, Gu Mengmeng felt that not feeding him was torture, not to mention letting him hunt. So, Elvis handed Gu Mengmeng over to Leah and went out to hunt. Gu Mengmeng sat in Lee's arms and stroked his large tail. She exclaimed in surprise, your tail seems to have become thicker after you leveled up. Seeing that Gu Mengmeng liked his transformation, Leah couldn't help but smile. He said, the appearance of the snow fox tribe will change according to their level. Gu Mengmeng turned around and looked at Lee's face carefully. Leah was good-looking to begin with. Coupled with his otherworldly aura, he looked like a demon or a deity. Perhaps after looking at him for a long time, Gu Mengmeng had become immune to it, so she had not carefully scrutinized Lee's facial features for a long time. Gu Mengmeng then looked at his eyes seriously after he mentioned it. Her eyebrows looked a little thicker than before. She looked a little less charming and more heroic. His tall nose seemed to have narrowed a little, becoming a more standard Western tiger's nose instead of the Oriental lion's nose. The tip of his nose was firm, making his facial features more three-dimensional and deep. A pair of long and affectionate eyes seemed to be filled with spring water, pouring a pool of deep love onto Gu Mengmeng's face, as if she was the only person in the entire world who could see him. His thin lips did not have a single wrinkle and looked as perfect as a work of art carved by God. His slightly opened mouth was like an invitation, making Gu Mengmeng feel an urge to immediately offer her lips to him. Li's face was even more perfect than before, so perfect that every angle was like a masterpiece. Chapter 788. It's broad daylight, what nonsense are you spouting? Gu Mengmeng blushed and lowered her head. However, Leah replied with a meaningful, "Oh." His lips moved closer to Gu Mengmeng's ear, his warm and ambiguous breath sprayed onto Gu Mengmeng's earlobe. With a hoarse voice, he said in an ambiguous tone, "So, this is an invitation? You can pamper me at night, right?" She did not know if it was a psychological effect, but Li's hormones seemed to have increased after he leveled up. She should have been used to being teased, but after being teased for half a year, she could no longer resist Li's advances. Li's fingers slid across Gu Mengmeng's arm, from her shoulder to her wrist. His fingertips seemed to carry an electric current, causing Gu Mengmeng's body to go numb. The only place she could hide was to lean deeper into his arms. Leah was satisfied with Gu Mengmeng's little action, but his hand landed on the kiss of the ocean in her hands. He tapped it twice nonchalantly and said, "The kiss of the ocean can absorb the poison left behind by Elvis in your body. If you eat it, our mating problem will be solved." Gu Mengmeng looked at the fist-sized black pearl in her hands and twitched her lips. "Are you sure you won't choke me to death?" Leah lightly knocked Gu Mengmeng's head. "Silly girl, who asked you to eat it whole? I can crush it, and then you can eat it." Gu Mengmeng had thought Leah was just joking around with his suggestion. Seeing that he was really prepared to crush it, Gu Mengmeng panicked. She pulled the kiss of the ocean back into her arms and frowned. "No, this is Qishuan's ransom. You cannot touch it." Leah sighed and did not touch the kiss of the ocean again. He just hugged Gu Mengmeng and said, "What should I do? I am jealous." The top of Gu Mengmeng's head was pressed against Li's chin. She could not lift her head to look at his expression and could only respond with a single word. Leah said, "Elvis is your first partner and is more important to you than me. I admit that. But now, even the little wolf pups are more important than me. Mengmeng, my heart hurts." Gu Mengmeng smiled helplessly. "You are all my family and equally important to me. But Qi Xian is in a more dangerous situation now, so I have no choice but to prioritize him." "I know." Leah said, "I also promise not to make things difficult for you. I understand the logic, but I still feel very disappointed. I was too greedy, wasn't I? I want to be the most important person to you." Gu Mengmeng hugged Leah and leaned her face against his chest, saying softly, "I'm sorry." Li's heart skipped a beat. He pursed his lips and chuckled. "You know very well that I prefer your confession to an apology." Without any hesitation, Gu Mengmeng said softly, "I love you." Leah then smiled contentedly and did not say anything else. He had committed a taboo, he should not have fought for the most important, in front of Gu Mengmeng. Back then, when Gu Mengmeng wanted to give him the only one, he was the one who forcefully pushed her into Elvis's arms. Later, Mengmeng asked him to give up. It was he himself who said that even if he could only be a beast pet, it would be fine as long as he could stay by her side. But now, he was already her legitimate partner, and he could confidently hold her in his arms. However, people were always greedy. Chapter 789. Actually, you could have leveled up a long time ago, right? Gu Mengmeng pressed her little face against Li's chest, listening to his heartbeat. Although it was a question, it sounded like a statement when it came out of his mouth. Leah chuckled and did not deny it. Gu Mengmeng continued, "I thought about it many times after that. Previously, when we were attacked by stray beasts, although you were caught in a pincer attack, the other party was also a third-level orc. With your third-level energy reserves, as long as you broke through the boundary, you could use the level system to turn the situation around. But you seem to rather be injured than leveling up. I always felt that it was strange, until last night, when those 3 stray beasts attacked you together without any discussion. Only then did I understand what you were thinking. Lee's face carried an indulgent smile throughout. He had always disliked others guessing his thoughts, especially when his thoughts were seen through. He would be very resistant and immediately force himself to hide his emotions even deeper. But when he was seen through by Gu Mengmeng, he felt a faint sense of excitement and anticipation. It was as if his carefully wrapped present was opened by his beloved, and with just one look, the other party knew how much effort he had put into choosing the present and how meticulously he had wrapped it. The feeling of his efforts being seen and cherished was really good. It was so good that the blood in his entire body warmed up, nourishing every cell in his body. Tell me about it. Leah coaxed Gu Mengmeng to say more of her thoughts. He liked to hear her describe her thinking process, because he could not enter her brain to see clearly how she looked when her mind was filled with himself. So, he treasured every word she explained to him, and even more so, he treasured the lively expression on her face when she talked about topics related to him. Gu Mengmeng did not know how Leah was feeling when he looked at her. His gaze towards her was always affectionate and she seemed to have gotten used to it. But thinking about the reason why Leah was unwilling to level up, Gu Mengmeng could not help feeling a little heartache. She sighed softly and said, "You didn't level up because you wanted to focus all the danger on yourself when we encountered a situation like yesterday, using yourself as bait to ensure my safety." His heart trembled. His Gu Mengmeng was so sensitive, he felt warm and proud, but also a little uneasy. As sensitive as she was, she couldn't accept his kindness with a clear conscience. Gu Mengmeng looked up and met Li's eyes. She said seriously, "You clearly know that I am already strong enough now, you don't need to do this anymore." "Silly girl." Leah rubbed Gu Mengmeng's head. The sunlight passed through the leaves and landed on his face, bringing much warmth to his smile. He pulled Gu Mengmeng's little hand to his lips and kissed it before continuing, "No matter how strong you are, you will always be my weakness. If you are even the slightest injury, it would be my heart." Chapter 790. Didn't he know that her heart would ache? No, Leah had always known that. He even hoped that Gu Mengmeng would never see through his thoughts, but at the same time, he was waiting for her to say, "Her heart will ache." Gu Mengmeng looked up into Li's eyes and said seriously and cautiously, "When Snake died, I almost couldn't recover from the setback. If not for you and Elvis staying by my side, I might never have been able to walk out of it. Do you want me to experience that kind of collapse again? If you were the one who died, I would break down." Leah hugged Gu Mengmeng tightly in his arms and kissed her left ear, saying intimately, "I was wrong, I shouldn't have made you worry. Don't be angry, don't be sad, forgive me, alright?" Gu Mengmeng's chin rested on Li's shoulder and she tilted her head, saying softly, "Hurry up and become stronger. Didn't you say that you will accompany me to bully others and become tyrants?" Leah chuckled, holding Gu Mengmeng's little face and kissing her lips. Under the sunlight, his smile was exceptionally radiant and beautiful, saying, "All right, as long as Gu Mengmeng says it, I will do it. I will quickly become stronger, then accompany you to bully others and rape others." Gu Mengmeng basked in the sun, feeling much more relaxed now that she had spoken her mind. Leah would always do what he promised her. He said that he would become stronger, and that he would no longer use himself as bait. This made Gu Mengmeng feel much more at ease. After waiting for a long time, Gu Mengmeng turned to look into the distance and said worriedly, "Why isn't Elvis back yet?" Leah also felt that with Elvis's abilities, the time taken for this hunt was a little too long. Not wanting Gu Mengmeng to worry, he said casually, "After all, this is not our territory, it might be more troublesome to find satisfying prey. You also know, other than meat, he also wants to be picky about the skin." Gu Mengmeng nodded. Yes. After the rainy season ended, it was going to be winter. At this time, Elvis really had to start preparing the beast skin for their family to use during the winter. And ever since Gu Meng Meng appeared, Elvis's requirements for the beast skin became stricter and stricter. Sometimes, Gu Meng Meng even suspected that Elvis was a Virgo. Thinking about this, she did not say anything more and continued to nestle in Li's arms, stroking the two. The upgraded version of Big Tail was waiting for Elvis to return. Without a watch, Gu Meng Meng could only estimate the time. About 1.5 to 2 hours later, Elvis returned with the processed prey. However, you're hurt? Gu Meng Meng immediately jumped out of Li's arms and looked at the palm-sized wound on Elvis's shoulder. Her heart ached. What happened? Are you in danger? Elvis looked at his wound and laughed softly. He rubbed Gu Meng Meng's little head and carried her up while passing the prey to Leah to cook. No, I was bitten by accident when I was hunting. I have a strong recovery ability. I'll be fine tomorrow or the day after. Gu Meng Meng frowned and looked at Elvis. You promised not to lie to me. A 5th-grade orc had been bitten by its prey during a hunt? Why don't you say that a wolf jumped into a rabbit's nest and was eaten by the rabbit? You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.